behind every single brand, there is a person. And behind each person, there is a story. So and that person and that story, what makes the brand from unknown to unforgettable. So without any delays, please introduce us to our audience and tell us a little bit about you.
Thank you so much. And I appreciate that because I think your story is absolutely fascinating as well, which is, we'll get into that too. My name is John. I am a physical therapist by training, and I am the CEO of Pickle. Pickle is a job board and AI matching talent platform for healthcare workers where you can match instantly with hundreds of the coolest companies and thousands of available roles across healthcare, whether that's a telehealth role, a flexible role, or a non-clinical role. And we built this for clinicians because as a clinician, I found that it was hard to find all the cool jobs in one place. And I couldn't really find an answer to what else could I do with my clinical training. So we built AI to do it.
This sounds fascinating. Can you tell us the journey? How did you come up with it? And by the way, I'd love to hear this story. How did you come up with the name? It's so catchy, but it makes me hungry.
Absolutely. So we came up with the name Pickle after we moved out of closed beta. We ran our closed beta as Next Degree. We had about 1,000 clinicians sign up in just a few months, and we talked to them. And a theme came up over and over that we couldn't ignore. And the theme was, I want to be able to pick the path for my career. I want to pick what I do with my training. I want to pick the best decision for myself, my family, my aspirations for healthcare, and my future. This word pick kept coming up. So we made the decision based on talking to 400 or more of our users that this is kind of the aspiration that we all want in healthcare. And I think across our generations, actually, you should be able to pick the role in the future that makes sense for your passions, your ambitions, your family, your career. And that's how we came up with the name Pickle. And it's so far it's been pretty good, I think. As far as how Pickle, yep, Pickle. So as far as how we came up with this company, my background is I am a physical therapist by training, and I actually used to train professional athletes and college athletes and high school athletes and things like that out on the West Coast as a physical therapist. But in the mid 2010s, I was living in Portland, Oregon, and they were going through the homeless and the opioid crisis. And I made the decision to switch to community health because I wanted to help people in my community that really needed it. I worked with a lot of women's health patients, a lot of oncology patients, a lot of autoimmune patients, homeless, uninsured, undocumented immigrants. And it was really, really, really appealing and really rewarding for me to take what I learned in pro sports and apply that high quality care to people who had fewer resources, right? Because everybody deserves great care. Where my story turns is COVID. I think the first wave of COVID was impactful to so many people, patients, businesses, clinicians. It really is kind of this unique time in history that we'll be telling our kids and our grandkids about for a long time. But working in that setting where I was working with people who had gone through chemo, or working with people who had less resources, or people who are homeless, like I really, really saw the burden of what it was like to live in a system where healthcare was so expensive and not being able to get the treatment you needed, or even being able to stay at home from work, impacted the health of your entire family. And so I worked during this first wave. It was really intense. And after the first wave, in about May 2020, Oxford announced they were making the first COVID vaccine, University of Oxford in England. At that point, I made the snap decision to go to Oxford. Specifically, I applied to business school in about a week because I wanted to be part of that ecosystem where they were creating this scalable change in healthcare with all of this big pharma and grant money and all the intellectual horsepower of Oxford. So 90 days later, I was in Oxford for a business school, and I started working with a bunch of startups. I worked with the chief medical officer of Bayer Pharmaceuticals as well, and just kind of diving headfirst into like what the future of healthcare and technology could look like. After I finished business school, I spent the next 2.5 years in London working in consulting for a small little consultancy called Idea Pharma. And Idea Pharma is absolutely wonderful. They are a firm where big pharma goes to for their early stage molecules, and Idea Pharma has to help turn them into medicines. And what that means is we had to find out, what did the clinical trials look like? What diseases could you go into? What did the patient profiles look like? How do you build out marketing? How do you deal with regulatory concerns if you're launching all over the world with different rules like Asia or Europe or the US? What does market access look like? We did this for molecules and for software products in like the pharma tech space. And we would work with these companies and package everything up, and Big Pharma would then go on and develop these life-saving cures of the future. I worked on things like CAR T. I worked on things like GLP-1s, and it was just like really, really interesting. I was also working at the time in London with the United Nations as a global health subject matter expert, working on digital health adoption and just general healthcare equity, like in the Middle East and Africa and things like that. And my UN friends, were saying that COVID would be over sometime soon. The announcement would come sometime soon. It's either UN or the World Health Organization. They all kind of exchange information or something like that. And so got the heads up. And in August 2023, when the World Health Organization announced COVID was over, I decided to leave my consulting job and go back to healthcare. And specifically, I started Pickle with two co-founders I met from Oxford because we realized that the engine of healthcare is its people, right? The people that take care of you and me and our families and our loved ones, the clinicians, the doctors, the nurses, the therapists. These people are the thing that make healthcare go. Yet at the same time, post-pandemic, there was so much burnout and there were so many challenges in healthcare that clinicians were having a hard time matching their mission and their clinical skills with roles that they could grow into. And we felt that not being able to even know what you could do could lead you even further down the path to burnout. So we built Pickle. And basically, our first iteration of Pickle, which we just launched on July 3rd, is this platform where we've aggregated thousands of the coolest telehealth, part-time, flexible, clinical, and non-clinical roles across about 100 of the coolest startups in healthcare. And we've built AI that helps clinicians match not only their backgrounds, but their desires and their ambitions and their training, which include things like marketing and operations and product, with these cool emerging mission-driven companies. Because at the end of the day, our philosophy is that clinicians should be able to pick. You should be able to pick the best role that marries your career growth and your aspirations for how you want to impact yourself, your community, your family, society, etc. And in the coming years, we'll be adding even more and more companies and roles, including hospitals, local clinics, and things like that.
That sounds very inspiring and amazing. And basically, you're taking care, a good care of people that will be taking care of us, right?
Yeah, I think it. I remember being a clinician during the COVID time, and the one thing that was really traumatic, and I think many of my clinical colleagues also have kind of had to box up, is that fear. I remember very simply coming home from work one day and not knowing what I was bringing home to my family because we had so little information about the pandemic. And kind of this like collective trauma, I think, is something that really embodies the sacrifice that clinicians go through, not only through clinical care, but the hundreds of thousands of dollars and the years of your youth that you dedicate to helping other people. I think that after that sacrifice, you should be able to at least have an idea of what you could do, and then you can make the best choice for yourself.
That's inspiring. I mean, when I first heard your story, I felt like I absolutely have to share it with the audience. And I really wanted you to share a little bit more about your personal journey. I think you've
Yeah.
had some quite amazing stories to share from your early ages and from your quid pro quo path and your fun years in Oxford. Would you mind to share a little bit of that?
Absolutely. So, my parents were immigrants to the US. I split time in growing up in rural Virginia, as well as the projects of New York City. Every summer, I would spend with my grandma in New York. And even today, she's 90 years old. She refuses to leave the projects. Like I'm here in Brooklyn right now. I go to Manhattan every weekend. She's like a tough, tough lady. But my parents, They didn't go to college. Parents were immigrants, and I remember feeling really out of place when I started going to school. I have a firm belief that little boys are not as smart as little girls.
Oh, come
And
on.
the reason why is I remember being 5 years old and I wanted to be like a fire truck, right? And I'm sure my mom's thinking like, you want to be a fire truck. Like, what are you thinking, kid? But the first job that I really remember wanting was I wanted to train professional athletes. So I started off my career training athletes. I did my undergrad at University of Virginia, where I was an athletic trainer. I did my doctor of physical therapy degree at ECU. I did an orthopedic residency, did a sports fellowship in Texas. I moved to Portland, and I actually was training college and professional athletes, like in Portland, in that whole Nike ecosystem, right? I was working with people from the MLB, NFL, Olympians, etc. And that was like a really, really cool thing as like a kid who'd always wanted to work with pro athletes. But how I made the shift to community health was quite interesting. One of my colleagues, she's a great physical therapist. I don't know if she's listening. Her name's Caitlin Portland. Like, still think about you. She was treating this 90-year-old man, and this man only wanted to pick up his great grandkids. Like, I'm here. That's why I'm here. I just had a new family member. How do I pick them up? So she went on holiday, and I took over her patient for her. And I spent a week or two teaching this 90-year-old man how to do a barbell deadlift, sumo style, to simulate picking up his kid, right? And you do it safely. We have risers, we have like weights of every single size. You can like measure it and gauge it and do all the stuff. But the main thing is teaching him how to bend appropriately to lift and carry, right? And he was able to do it. He was able to pick up this child. And I remember he sent me a picture of it. And that's when I realized that I had forgotten why I entered healthcare in the first place. As a teenage boy, I wanted to work in pro sports. But as a very, very young child, 3 or 4 years old, I remember being in rural Virginia and going to the doctor's office with my parents and thinking it was really strange that they got different care than other people. Their care wasn't bad at all. But I remember the conversations were shorter, the questions were different because I'm fluent in English. My parents speak English, but they're not native speakers. And I always thought it was different how their conversations were more abbreviated. And I realize now as an adult that's due to things like language differences and cultural differences and stuff like that. But that experience as a young child, as a 3 to 4 year old kid going to the doctor with my parents, that's what brought me into healthcare. I had forgotten it as a little boy and as a young man trying to go into sports and be this person, that it came full circle after working with this 90-year-old man. And that's what made me shift to community health. And then the rest is history.
How did your parents react when you told them that you were making such a shift? How did your friends respond to your desire to go from one career path into another?
So I have a funny story. So my mother, I love her to death. She's the nicest lady, but sometimes she'll just be bluntly honest with you. And I remember the day I got my acceptance into Oxford. And I called my mom. I said, Mom, I got in Oxford. And my mom, she says, does this mean you're not a doctor anymore? And Oxford was the number one school in the world at that point. Right? I just got in, it's like this whole pandemic thing. And my response to my mom was, Mom, like I'm a doctor of physical therapy, but I'm not really like a medical doctor anyway. And she was just worried that could she still tell her friends that her son had a doctorate of some sort, right? So that kind of encapsulates that relationship. We still laugh about it today.
Bigger than a doctor. How was your years in Oxford? How did you make the best of your experience? I love the story about the beer, so I want my audience
Yeah.
to hear it too.
So Oxford is an amazing place, especially as an American. Like I know that you're European. As Americans, we don't really think about what life is like outside. But for me, it was really crazy to go to a school that was 1,000 years old and 4 times older than the US, because I had never even thought about living outside the US before. And then what happened was Oxford spent about 2 or 3 months in lockdown. The whole UK did. So I had sold my house and quit my job and sold everything I owned and gone to this foreign country that I had never been to before. And I was stuck there, right? But what was fascinating is the school did a couple of great things. The first thing is the school did not let any tourists into the university. So we were stuck in Oxford, but we had the whole university basically to ourselves. And the second thing that was really amazing is they instituted the rule of six, where you can only hang out with six people in your bubble at a time, which allowed you to make these kind of really deep relationships with people instead of this like traditional business school sense of meeting 300 people horizontally at once. And Oxford's really special because, at least in their business school, I think they had 50% women. I think they had 70 countries that were in our program, and they had at least 10% of the class that came from the continent of Africa. So as an American, I was now a minority, right, in this program. And keep in mind, we were in like we were in this whole lockdown pandemic situation. So I got to ask all my friends, all my new friends, what healthcare was like in their countries and what life was like, and all these things that I had never really thought about growing up in America with our cars and our gasoline and our fast food and things like that. But then I realized that business school was probably not the best choice for me because I had never opened Excel or PowerPoint before, didn't know what a debit or credit was, or didn't know what a cash flow sheet or a balance sheet was. So I was really struggling. So once the lockdown ended, I started to exchange what I knew for things that I did. And so what I did was I started a pro bono physical therapy clinic in my flat once COVID ended. And what I did was I would exchange free physical therapy sessions to my friends in exchange for a six-pack of beer and a lesson about something they were experts in. So I learned how to do slides and spreadsheets from my friends from McKinsey, right? I learned about supply chain from my friends in manufacturing. I learned about strategy and long-term projects from my friends in oil and gas. And and I got to teach them about healthcare. I got to teach them about their bodies. I got to teach them about strengthening exercises and things like that. And yeah, I was booked out for like weeks. And I remember at the end of the year, I started getting inbound requests for some of the sports teams because I think they had found out through the other networks that like a pro sports US physio was in Oxford. So like people from the track team and the rowing team and like the soccer team, the football team would like say, hey, like, are you taking any clients? And I'm like, I'm not taking any clients, literally just trading beer. So I guess we could hang out. But yeah, that's how I really put up my development in the business sense, especially considering Oxford's only a 1 year MBA.
So
We
you
definitely
basically
shared the beer. We definitely shared the beer
you
afterwards
shared
too.
the no, this is great. So you basically doubled down on the Oxford opportunity, got 3 degrees or 4 degrees in one.
Yeah. I learned a lot. I don't know how many degrees I got. I got my MBA, but really, it's such a rich place to learn from different people and different cultures. And I imagine like Cambridge is probably the same, but we don't talk about Cambridge. So
That's amazing. So now you're a brand new entrepreneur with the new company, and you guys launched several months ago, right? Officially, fully live, right?
So we launched our private beta in the
Hmm.
spring. We launched our public beta last week, July 3rd.
And
So yeah,
how did it
we've only been
feel?
alive for like 7 or 8 months. Uh, I think I've started businesses before, but never a hyper growth tech business. I definitely think what people say about the pace being overwhelming, it definitely is. Like you kind of have to be insane to start a true hyper growth company. But if it's a big challenge you're trying to solve and you're doing it with your friends, like you might as well go all for it. So the experience is really good, but it's been really, really fast. Like I can't even believe it's July now. In my head, I still think it's January. Then we speak to other people and they're like, my company has been alive for 7 years. We just hit 1,000 clinicians. You got 1,000 in like a few months. How did you do it? I'm like, I don't know.
Well, so what keeps you awake at night? Is there anything, or you sleep like a baby from all the stress and overwork during the day?
Uh, the thing that keeps me up at night is what if I'm not going fast enough? And I'll tell you why. Like, we build this thing for clinicians. Like, clinicians should have a choice. They should be able to pick their careers, their futures, right? But one thing that I remember vividly, and one thing that I've learned from all my healthcare friends is whether you're a doctor or a nurse or a dentist or a physical therapist or an occupational therapist or a pharmacist, you're never really taught in school how to look for a job, right? In fact, some of us are told if you think about anything but patient care, you're going to be an unethical clinician, which like cuts to the core of why you joined the profession, right? You want to help people. But the backlash of that is with healthcare so expensive, one, can you really offer the best care and recommendations to your patient if you don't know how much your care costs, right? And two, with how expensive it is in the US to become a clinician, how do you buy a house or have a family if you don't know how to manage your debt? So you have this big debt load, right? You have this mission of saving people, helping people, but you don't really know how to marry the two. So what do? Well, you come out of school, you never learn how to look for a good employer, a good job. You're obviously focusing on the only number that you can think of, which is salary. And the thing that keeps me up at night is I've spoken to dozens of clinicians who left the profession because they took their first job in a really high paying role that ended up being like a travel role in the middle of Iowa or something like that. And the reason why that's challenging is because as a new graduate, you still need mentorship. But these roles that are hard to fill get paid a lot by these like travel staffing firms and whatnot. So you're stuck alone in the middle of Iowa, seeing 30 patients a day with no mentorship. Of course you're going to burn out, right? And to me, our greatest resource has always been our next generation of clinicians, right? I taught students as well. They are the future. But if we're not preparing them for sustainable careers and we're churning them out, what's the implications for our own families down the road if there's not enough clinicians to treat our children? So that's what keeps me up at night. How do we stop our newest clinicians from entering a system where they're more likely to burn out because of knowledge gaps, right? This is strictly knowledge gaps. And this is not saying travel is bad or agencies are bad. That's not it at all. But I'm saying that the ability to function in an independent area without any support comes at a cost, and that cost is minimized if you have more experience and you know what you're getting into versus being fresh out of school, especially during COVID, in some of the hardest settings you could have ever imagined without any support.
Well, it sounds like there is a baking of another business idea coming out from that conversation here.
I don't know. It's just, I think one thing that healthcare does really well is we do really well at teaching others. Like it's ingrained in us. You do your internships, you shadow, you learn. And it really is a way of like giving back to the next generation. And so even now, I still have my license. I'm still a licensed clinician, but I don't treat patients. I'm still thinking of like how do we make this whole thing sustainable so that we can have enough clinicians, acknowledging the fact that you should also be able to pick how you want to run your career, right? And I think telehealth is a really interesting one, especially post COVID, because it kind of gives you that nice flexibility versus balance in your career, if that's what you want.
Interesting. So, what are your ambitious goals for the next 5 years, so 3 to 5 years? Where do you see you take Pickle to, or where do you see yourself being in?
I would love to be the code word for a whole new generation of healthcare professionals. Like by 2030, two-thirds of all clinicians will be Gen Z or young millennials. And this is according to US Census data. And there's so many taboo topics of our forefathers, like salary, like student loan debt, that Gen Z's like just value transparency. They don't even care about it, right? But you still can't speak about that openly in an environment where maybe you're not the head honcho or whatnot. So I would just love to be one, a place clinicians can learn about all the taboo things for their careers about salary, locations, etc., like openly and freely. But also, secondly, kind of like a cool code word to talk amongst your colleagues when you're having issues, like you're in a pickle. Like, how do you get out of it?
In a pickle.
Yeah. And so ultimately, the net goal is my goal is for Pickle to be a place for every healthcare professional, whether you're a doctor or a nurse, physical therapist, to unite as one tribe and to come to a place and know that you can find whatever you're looking for in your career, whether that's right now or maybe 5 years from now, right? Where you know that maybe you want to be a clinic manager one day, but you're a new graduate. How do I get there? Right? Or maybe you are a clinic director and you want to be VP of ops at a startup. How do I get there? Right? And not only be able to find these roles, but to find people who look like you, who have the same similar background and training in you as you, and find inspiration to know that someone else from your background has done it too, and to learn from them.
That's a wonderful inspiration. And I'm pretty sure that by just listening to you and talking to you, people get charged up and inspired by your vision and passion. And that's, I'm honored to share this. So if any businesses would like to join the forces with you or support your idea, what is the best way to reach you, or what immediate need that, you may be able looking for assistance from anyone who will be listening to this?
Absolutely. I think the easiest way to find us is to check us out at withpickle.com. Whether you're a clinician yourself or you have a sister or a cousin who's a doctor or a nurse and just thinking about what's next, definitely check us out at withpickle.com. Companies can also reach out to us there to help get on the platform and help find mission-driven clinicians to help with your scaling and your hiring and your impact on your community. Um, Basically, I like to think of us as the Bumble or the Tinder of healthcare hiring.
Healthcare.
Yeah, we don't actually, we're actually not a recruiting firm. We don't do recruiting. What we do is we match mission-driven companies with mission-driven individuals who are top candidates so you can meet each other and go interview. Who you choose to interview and hire is up to you as a company or hiring manager. But the first step is taking the people who are the engine, understanding their needs and their inspirations, and finding the cool companies that would hire them and just letting them know they exist. So if you're looking to scale rapidly and not looking for recruiter fees or whatnot, I would definitely love to work for you or work with you.
This is wonderful. And if you'll be 100% successful, maybe we'll try to replicate on one of the dating agencies too.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. I think oh man, Bumble's huge. Tinder's huge. I think that'd be if we were able to get if we were able to become a verb, that'd be amazing.
Well, the time will show. I'm pretty sure the all stars lined up for you guys.
Yeah.
All right, John. It was my pleasure. And I'm honored. So, last couple of words. So, what the words of inspiration you would share for any crazy people out there who are really trying to launch an ambitiously viral business, to really mission driven? What are the things that you would suggest them to look out for or inspire them to go forward?
I had a mentor tell me this once that I thought was really smart. And basically he said every kite needs a stone. One of the biggest misconceptions in startups is that you have to have this great idea that can change the world. This is a kite. This is a dreamer. This is someone who thinks that they can shape the world in a way that they see. But in my opinion, with my co-founders, I actually think the stones are more important. The stones are the operators, the people who could apply logic and rationality to your dream to help break it down into chunks and bites so you can make progress towards it. Because without a stone, a kite gets distracted. They just fly around. Without a kite, a stone gets stuck. But really, putting them together and finding these teammates is really, really important. And I've heard so many people say, I don't think I can be a founder. I don't have a great idea. I just see the problem in everything. It's like, no, you're the perfect founder. What you need to do is find someone with an idea that you're inspired by and work together to make it real. So yeah, the kite and the stone. Every good team needs both, or preferably a few more stones than kites.
I love it. Thank you so much for sharing. And with that being said, until next time, thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great day.